Welcome to the Champs App podcast, where we help players and parents demystify the world of minor hockey development and recruiting for both girls and boys. On today's podcast, we talk with Brad Frost, head coach of the Minnesota Golden Gophers women's hockey program. We discuss his impressive career, which includes 4 national championships and coaching countless Olympians. He shares his principles for coaching, team, and student athlete success. Brad also provides his perspective on the recruiting process and what to expect during the summer months. This was a great conversation with Brad, so I hope you enjoy it. Champs App is your recruiting and development copilot. Champs App helps athletes, coaches, parents, and agents/advisors navigate the world of youth sports. We recently completely redesigned Champs App so that all our offerings fit together seamlessly to dramatically improve the user experience. Next time you visit Champs App, you will see that it is much easier to use Champs App as your co-pilot for recruiting and development. While we will continue to provide free content and tools like podcasts, articles, and directories on our website, some new content will require a free Champs App account to access special analysis and information. We have made it easy to create a free Champs App account without the need to create an online profile. Our latest free tool is the Champs App Team Coach Directory, a powerful resource designed to simplify your search for D1, D3, and U Sports coaches in one convenient place. Whether you're a parent, player, or youth coach, our directory offers a seamless way to find, research, connect, or message coaches across women's college hockey. In addition, our first premium product has been the Champs App messaging tool, which is the fast, easy way to send error-free messages to coaches. Champs App messaging cuts the time to send emails to coaches by over 50%. Over the coming months, we will continue to offer additional premium tools and services to our community. We still have a long way to go to achieve all the big goals we have for Champs App. You will see new offerings being released over the coming months. So look out for more announcements on social media, in your email, and in the app. We look forward to helping you on your journey as your sports recruiting and development co-pilot. I'm very excited to welcome Brad Frost to the podcast. Brad is the head coach of the Minnesota Golden Gophers women's hockey team. Originally from Burlington, Ontario, Brad played college hockey and golf at Bethel University. He then started coaching both volleyball and hockey at Egan High School in Minnesota. And after a brief stint coaching back at his alma mater, Bethel University, he joined Laura Halderson's staff at Minnesota, where he won his first national championship as an assistant coach. Then in 2007, he became the head coach of the Gophers, and in his 17 years at the helm, he has won another 4 national championships, 2 sets of back-to-backs, including an undefeated season in 2012-13. Overall, his teams have made 10 Frozen Fours, and he will hit 500 wins when the Gophers win their first game next season. So welcome to the podcast, Brad.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you.
I got to say, I'm really lucky. I mean, you and the last podcast, we had Bill Mandigo from Middlebury. Yeah, between the two of you, over 1,100 wins. So, like I'm pretty spoiled with the coaches that I've been able to get on this. So welcome to the podcast. Like we do all of our coaches, tell us about you starting playing hockey at 4 years old in Burlington and how that all came about.
Yeah, well, I mean, as many of the listeners know, it's kind of a culture in Canada. It's what you do, and so I grew up in Burlington, Ontario. Had a stint in London, Ontario for a couple of years as well. But I don't even know how it really happened. I just know that I started playing hockey at a really, really early age, and it was always a really, really important thing for me. I loved it. I loved the competition. I loved the camaraderie. The opportunity to just to get out on the ice and to play free and enjoy myself. And so, as I look back on my experience growing up playing hockey, it was never a chore. We in Canada, we had a lot of 5 a.m., 6 a.m. practices. I was just telling the story the other day about, every time we had an early morning practice, my mom and I would swing by Tim Hortons and get a donut and a chocolate milk, and off to the rink we went. But I just never remember not wanting to play and not wanting to be around the game. And so really, really positive childhood, very fortunate to be able to grow up playing hockey. I was a smaller player. Well, some of my teammates went on to play junior hockey in the OHL. I didn't. I stayed and played some high school hockey at Aldershot High School. And had an incredible experience there. And it was really at that time in high school that I knew I wanted to be a teacher and a coach for the rest of my life. And and was able to teach and now coach full time. And so it was a pretty special childhood as I look back on it very, very fondly.
And you played multiple sports. So I mentioned that you played golf when you were at Bethel. What other sports do you play? I believe you played volleyball. What else were you interested
Yeah,
in?
volleyball. I actually, so as you mentioned, my first coaching job was at New Life Academy for volleyball, and then on to Egan High School for a year. Um, so I loved volleyball. We had volleyball, boys volleyball in high school in Canada. They actually just implemented it right now, this coming year in Minnesota as well. Some boys high school volleyball, but in the past it was always girls. So volleyball, golf, played baseball growing up as well, and those were kind of the main four that I did. And I also think back to my childhood too. And when it was hockey season, it was hockey season. When it was baseball and golf season, it was baseball and golf season. You know, and now you look at the specialization of sports, and it's really, really hard to play those multiple sports. But I was really fortunate to do that.
Okay, and so now let's get to the most important question here. So you lived in Burlington, Ontario. So were you a Hamilton Tiger Cats fan or a Toronto Argonauts fan? Because you're kind of in between the two.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm special in this way, but I didn't. We went to both Argos and Hamilton Ticats games, but we weren't really passionate about either of those teams. The CFL is the CFL. My mother grew up in Minnesota, and that's how I ended up here. So we were Vikings fans from an early age, and tended to watch more of the NFL and versus the CFL.
Okay, I expected that to be the answer, that you said you're going to bleed purple. And as you mentioned, you know, your mom's American, your dad's Canadian, I believe.
Yep.
They met at Bethel University. Your brothers went to Bethel University. Maybe just talk about how you ended up at Bethel University.
Yeah, you know, again, I knew I wanted to teach, I knew I wanted to coach, and I knew I wanted to play hockey in college. And um, in just being in Minnesota, you know, basically every year, once a year, we would come and visit family, and so I had a lot of family here. My dad went to Bethel. My older brother was at Bethel when I was deciding where to go, and ultimately, I wanted to play hockey for a faith-based program. And Bethel is non-denominational, somewhat Baptist school, and their faith aligns with mine, and I really wanted to um, continue on with a couple things that I'm pretty passionate about: my faith and hockey. And so ended up going to Bethel. I can tell you, vulnerability here, we were not very good, but my experience there was second to none. If I had the opportunity to do it again, I'd go back there. I absolutely love my time there. The friendships that I was able to make. My roommate actually for a few of those years was Joel Johnson, who is now the head coach at St. Thomas, and a longtime assistant and associate head coach of mine. But lifelong friends there, and really, really enjoyed my experience. So because of my mother being American, as myself and my brothers were able to get American citizenship early on. And so having both American and Canadian citizenship allowed me to not have to move back to Canada, and able to stay here and teach and coach and get my career going.
Gotcha. Well, since you brought up the subject, you know, in terms of the importance of faith,
Mhm.
maybe just talk about how that's helped you in your coaching career. I know one of your mentors, Vince Miller, you know, has really helped you in terms of
Yeah.
figuring out, you know, to guide you, and maybe just talk about how your faith has helped you as a coach.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I grew up in a Christian home. I had a just a great childhood, and you know, when I went to ended up going to Bethel, my able to continue to live out my faith, and not have to you know, feel bad about it, quite honestly. And it wasn't until after I left Bethel, you know, now all of a sudden you're out into the real world. Not everybody has the same views and viewpoints and those types of things, which is completely fine. But it was an opportunity for me to really kind of shape how I wanted to coach and how I wanted to live my life. And I think that's the biggest thing is I coach in a way that I try and do things the right way, far from perfect, but we have four values: being tough, grateful, disciplined, and devoted. A lot of those values tend to have some faith in there in regards to what does true devotion really mean, discipline, toughness, those types of things. I mean, it's all intertwined in who I am and how I treat people. And so, I think back to the fact that I have three boys. One just graduated from Grand Canyon University, a faith-based school down in Phoenix. My middle boy is going into his last year down there, and my youngest son is he's going to be a senior in high school. But we want to grow our players, and we want to treat our players as we would treat our kids, and we want to love them unconditionally. We want to have high expectations for them. Sometimes that means we're going to kick them in the pants and tell them they got to pick it up. Other times we're going to put our arm around them and say, hey, it's okay. It's going to be okay. And so faith just for me is something that is just always on the forefront of my mind. It's the forefront of how I live. Again, far from perfect, continue to make mistakes, but I'm so grateful of the grace and forgiveness of Jesus Christ.
Beautiful. All right. So you mentioned that you got three kids, and I'm just curious, when you and your wife named your kids, was the H at the end of each of their names for hockey?
No, they're all biblical names, as you know, Micah, Jonah, and Josiah. And somebody was wondering if we were gonna put Obadiah in there too, and we never got to that. But no, just biblical names that we really, really liked, and I suppose you could say H for hockey, but I think it just kind of softens their names at the end of it.
Okay, perfect. All right, now let's move on to your coaching career at Minnesota. How did you end up at Minnesota from coaching high school and at Bethel for a season?
Well, great. It's a great story. So again, Joel Johnson, who I was very close with and continue to be, he had coached at Bethel a little bit. We had coached together some boys baseball in high school, at a high school in Woodbury. So we had continued to stay in touch, continued to be really, really good friends. He ended up getting the assistant job at the University of Minnesota in 99, 2000. That's when Minnesota won their first national championship. It was unfortunately the year before the NCAA sponsored it, but the AWHCA tournament they won. And so then after that summer, I was teaching in Egan, and I was going to be coaching as an assistant with the men's team at Bethel. And I did, Laura Halderson was doing a hockey camp in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. Joel was working that with her, and she asked if he knew of anybody else who would like to work the camp. So I worked it as well, and got to know Laura a little bit. And she got to know me, more importantly. We did that camp in the summer of 2000. I then went and continued to teach in Egan, and was halfway through my coaching stint at Bethel. And Libby Witchker, who was the other assistant coach at Minnesota, decided to resign halfway through the year. And so they needed another assistant coach. And this was in late December. And Joel said, well, how about Brad? And Laura said, yeah, I really enjoyed working with Brad this past summer. And so let's bring him on. So I resigned from my teaching job and dove headfirst, and the rest is history.
Beautiful. All right. So let's talk about the University of Minnesota. It is not a small liberal arts school in the Northeast. You got over 50,000 students in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. Maybe just talk about the school, the academics, and what it's like to go to school at Minnesota, just in general, as just a regular student.
Yeah, certainly. So we're a Big Ten school, which means we're a bigger school. Academics are very, very important. Athletics are very important. As you see behind you on your screen is Ritter Arena. That was the first rink built specifically for a women's hockey program. So that's where we play. It seats about 3,000. We have over 2,000 a game. Many times we sell out against some of our bigger rivals in Wisconsin and Ohio State. And we're really, really fortunate and blessed to be able to play in a facility like that. The school itself is ranked around 23rd out of over 1,500 public universities. It's one of the top research institutions in the whole country. and it's a beautiful, beautiful school and campus. While it is bigger and there are a lot of students, many of those students are commuters. They do not necessarily stay on campus, and a lot of those students as well are doing their graduate work with their masters and PhDs. But it is a bigger school, but you can walk from one side of campus to the other in about 12 minutes. And so you've got all of the stadiums, arenas, fields, things like that in one section of campus. You've got the academic part of campus as well, which is completely different. There's beautiful trees and grass, and it's very, very quiet. A lot of old buildings. The university was founded in 1851, and so a lot of mature trees and beautiful buildings there as well. And so those are kind of the two main parts of campus. And we're really, really fortunate to be at a Big Ten school where academics are really, really important, but so are athletics. When it comes to hockey, when it comes to football, basketball, everything is big time. And as you can see by our rink, that's just one example of the facilities that we have here.
Perfect. I was going to ask you, what the advantages are of being, part of the Big Ten, which is really like at this point the Big 18 or the Big 20.
Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But maybe just talk about the athletic facilities for the women's hockey team. Obviously, you talked about the arena. What about the training facilities? Maybe additionally, the academic help that they have in terms of the facilities for preparing for classes and things like that.
Absolutely. We about 7 or 8 years ago, our athletic department built an athletes village, it's called. And so in that athletes village is all of our academic counselors' offices, our tutor spaces, our interview rooms, our study rooms. It's a building that is 6 floors, and it is for the student athletes. On the top floor is a leadership center. We have sports psych, a nutritionist, mental health performance coach, all these different things all these different people that are here to surround you to help make the campus feel as small as you want it to be. You can always make a big school smaller, but it's really hard to take a small school and make it bigger. So the resources from an academic standpoint are incredible. There's constant check-ins with our academic counselor, with the professors of our student athletes to make sure that they're not falling through the cracks. There's individual meetings with our players and our academic counselor. There's mentors, there's tutors that are all provided for our student athletes. They are, I don't want to say spoiled, but there's a reason that being grateful is one of our values, because not everybody gets what our program receives. From a nutrition center standpoint, there is in that athletes village, there is a nutrition center on the ground floor for the athletes. Our athletes receive meals there, along with the other 600 athletes at the University of Minnesota. They get to know each other while they're breaking bread together and eating together. And then all of a sudden they're having an opportunity to cheer for the football player that they were sitting with on Tuesday night. And the basketball player is coming to our game to cheer on one of our players that they were sitting with on Wednesday night. So the academic resources, the athletes village is a really, really special place and a safe place for all the athletes at the University of Minnesota. And then, as we mentioned, with Ritter Arena, we have our team lounge, we have our locker room, our training room, weight room, are all right here in Ritter Arena, and we're really, really fortunate to be able to play in a facility like Ritter Arena.
Beautiful. All right. So the facilities, the school has been a magnet for some of the top players in the country during your tenure there. I believe, you've coached somewhere between 15 and 20 Olympians. What is it about the program that makes it such a great place to play for the highest of, the top of the top players? I can, go on listing all the Olympians, but, the two names that come to mind are the Lamoureux twins in terms of what was it that you guys did that were able to convince them to come, and what made them such special players?
Well, I think with the Lamoureux twins, one North Dakota was just starting their hockey program, and they're from Grand Forks, and so they came the year before the Olympic Games, and they wanted to be on that next Olympic team, and so they came, had an incredible year with us, and after the Olympics, they then transferred back to North Dakota and really helped elevate that program to a national contender. I think back to their senior years in 2013 was our undefeated season, and we were playing North Dakota in Ritter Arena to go to the Frozen Four, which was also at Ritter Arena and already sold out. We were undefeated, and in the quarterfinal matchup against North Dakota, and the game went into 3 overtimes, and we were able to pot one home just with a minute or 2 left there in that 3rd overtime. But they were on North Dakota at that time, along with many other Olympians. And I think the biggest thing for us that we talk a lot about is our culture, who we are, what we're about, our values, our process of development, how we want to develop our players as hockey players, but quite frankly, more importantly, as people. We want to win championships. We're going to be about the process. We're going to be about our values. But when the puck drops on Friday and Saturday night, we want to be making sure that we're ready to go. We're kicking butt and doing everything we can to win hockey games. And so, as you mentioned, we've had, I think, 19 or 20 Olympians come through our program. Amanda Kessel, Hannah Brandt, Gigi Marvin, Taylor Heisey will be an Olympian in the next one. Grace Zumwinkle, Abby Murphy. And now we've got several European Olympians as well, with Josephine Boubang and Nellie Leighton and Nat Malinkova. So we're excited about that, but we're a place where everybody that is coming from their high school team were captains, right? And so can we bring those players that are exceptional players and people, can we bring them together, involve them into our culture so that it's not about them, it's about everybody else. The puck doesn't care who scores it, but there is only one puck on the ice. And so how can we work together to be the best that we can be? And we really feel like development happens when you're playing with and against the best players every day in practice.
Beautiful. And what makes all those Olympians so special? What is it that makes them, like, when you're on the recruiting trail and you're watching players and all that stuff, what's that it factor that you see in those Olympians that maybe the players that are just not at that level,
Yeah.
what is it the Olympians exhibit?
Well, I think it's a couple things. One is talent, right? You have to have a baseline of talent to not only play collegiate hockey, but then to take the next step and become an Olympian and play at the highest level, or the PWHL, whatever it is. So they're very, very skilled, but they are incredibly determined and competitive, is what I've noticed. They want to win. They want to win every rep. They want to win every small game. They want to win every practice, every hockey game, you name it. They want to win. And so I think the other thing too is that they are exceptional at the things that they're really good at. And they continue to work on those things, but they're also very, very open to the things that they're very aware of the things that they lack, and they have the desire to, and the competitiveness to get better in those areas as well. There's no time off. I mean, obviously that there is, but in their own minds, they're constantly thinking about, how can I get better? How can I get to the next level? What is it that's going to separate me from everybody else?
Perfect. All right. Will there ever be another team that goes 41-0?
Boy, I think back to 2016 when we ended up playing Boston College, and they were 40-0, and we played them in the national championship game at New Hampshire, and that was the closest anybody's gotten. But fortunately, we were able to beat them that year, so that they were 40-1, and we were able to win our 7th national championship. But man, it is hard. And I still look back to those times. We won kind of our last 10 games in 2012. We went 41-0 in 13. And then we started off on a winning streak in 2014 as well. So not only going 41-0 in that season, but also winning 62 games in a row was an incredible feat, and something that I still can't really figure out. But yeah, we were this picture behind me here, this wall is from when we played Boston College in the in the national championship game of that 41-0 season. So I don't know. I would never say it can't be done, but it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, and especially these days with so many schools doing well.
Everybody's good. Yeah.
And in fact, some of the success of these other teams is partially your own doing, because of your coaching tree. So whether it's Nadine Mazeral, who I believe played and coached with you,
Yeah.
who's now the two-time national champion at Ohio State. You mentioned Joel Johnson now at St. Thomas. Natalie Darwitz has come and gone with multiple teams. Mira, who is also Bethany Brawson, and then even Nina Rogers, who's now at Maine. So you have quite the coaching tree, and now they are all doing pretty well outside of your domain, and competing with you. So do you feel that it's going to be even harder for you to win against your own coaches that used to be part of your world, and therefore does have you changed your measure of success in recent years, given how much competition there is?
Well, success always for us comes down to fulfilling and embodying our values each and every day. We know that we're going to be measured by championships from the outside world, and certainly we want to win. We've won multiple national championships. We won 4 in 5 years between 2012 and 2016 and 14. We lost in the national championship game to Clarkson. And we've been to multiple Frozen Fours and NCAA tournaments since then. And so we know that at the University of Minnesota, we're always going to be in the mix for a national championship. But what you realize as you go through those national championships is there so many things have to go right from a health perspective, injury perspective, referee calls, goaltending, bounces of the puck here and there. A lot of things have to go really, really well. And so obviously we want to win championships. That's ultimately the goal when it comes to our hockey program of what we can put on the wall and what we can tell recruits. But more importantly, honestly, for us is what we do off the ice, who we are, what we're about, how we live our lives. Are we preparing our players for the next 40 years of their life, or are we just here to win hockey games? And I can promise you here at the University of Minnesota, we're not just here to win hockey games. We're here to develop them as hockey players, but actually, first and foremost, we're here to develop them as people. We believe we can do that through our culture, through our resources, through our values, through the way that we teach and coach our players. And ultimately, if they are having a wonderful experience, we're winning lots of hockey games, they get an incredible degree, and they want to be a part of the University of Minnesota and women's hockey program for life, then we know that we've done our job. And we've had a ton of success with that. So many of our players have gone into coaching, not just in college coaching, but in high school coaching as well. And we take a ton of pride in that. To me, that shows that they had a good experience while they were here at the University of Minnesota, and they then want to take those things on and share their experience and their knowledge with the people that they have the opportunity to do that with. So happy for Muzz, Joel, Bethany, Mira. I mean, it's really, really fun coaching against them. It's really fun seeing their success. Do we want to beat them every time we step on the ice? Absolutely. But again, I think they've taken some things from here and the success that we had at the University of Minnesota. They're now doing that and just broadening our scope in how you should treat people and how you should coach people up. And the more people that do it the right way, I'm in favor of.
Beautiful. All right. So moving backwards from your alumni, let's talk about your current staff. So you got Greg May, Jessica Scott, and then Mitch Baker moved up the road from Faribault last season. So maybe just talk about coaching staff and how you divide responsibilities.
Well, I am so grateful for the three of them. Jess has been with me for about 6 years now. She came in as our director of ops. She was a longtime high school coach here in Minnesota. Wanted to get out of coaching and into more of the administrative type of work. But once the NCAA starting last year granted teams to have 4 full-time coaches, it was a no-brainer for us to move Jess into the assistant coach role. She's our recruiting coordinator, incredibly organized. She's incredible with recruits and their parents, has a wonderful personality, and she kind of works on both sides of the puck. a lot of individual things with our players. Greg May, his nickname is Boom. Boom was a longtime boys hockey coach, high school hockey coach. He then came to the University of Minnesota on the men's side for 2 years and was their video coach and director of ops. He then went back to Augsburg, where he was D3 school, where he was a player, and became the head coach there on the men's side. Took his team to the Frozen Four and to the national tournament. And so he has been wonderful. He's got 2 young daughters. You have to have a certain demeanor and personality about you in order to coach women, and he has that. He's more in charge of the offensive side of the puck, so runs our power play, which was #1 in the country through almost the whole year. And runs our forwards. Again, really, really good skill guy and a great hockey coach. Mitch Baker was a Bethel grad and coached at Bethel, coached at Union out in Schenectady, and then was at Faribault the last 2 years. And again, wonderful person, a couple of young kids. And Mitch is more on the defensive side of the puck. He runs our goalies. Does a great job with them, our penalty kill, and so our staff it's the first time, honestly, Ray, that I have not had to change the forward lines or change the D or coach the D or coach the forward. It for the first time in my career, which is a long one, allowed me to really be the head coach and oversee everything, have my hands in a little bit of everything. Certainly as a staff, we're always talking about how we want to play, what we want to do. But this past year was one of my favorite years coaching, quite frankly, because of the loyalty and the trust that I had in my staff, and in the fact that they had my back, they knew what they were doing, and are really, really competent in what they do.
Beautiful. All right. So I wasn't going to bring this up, but there was the 4-OT game, and so it may not have ended exactly the way you would have liked against Clarkson. But we'll move on from that one, because you had your chances, but
we did.
Let's move on to the next thing. So here's my question for you. We're going to move into the recruiting side of things. I looked at your roster from last year, and about 60% of your players, roughly speaking, are from Minnesota. Is that because every Minnesota hockey player's dream is to play for the Gophers? Like, is that why it's such a high percentage of your players are from the state of hockey?
I do think a lot of the players, the majority of kids in Minnesota, do grow up wanting to play for the University of Minnesota. When you look in the stands at our games, it's oftentimes young girls and their hockey teams and their parents and coaches. And so they know what Gopher hockey is from a very early age. The opportunity to play at the University of Minnesota is generally something that they really, really want to do. The hockey in Minnesota is very, very good. So we're not just recruiting in Minnesota because kids want to come to the University of Minnesota. We're recruiting in Minnesota because there's really, really good hockey players here. If I go down the list, I'll probably forget some, but the Heiseys and the Zumwinkels and Gigi Marvins and Lee Stecklines, Melitza McMillans. I mean, these are like world-class players that are from Minnesota. You look at the Olympic teams and how many players in the PWHL are from Minnesota. There's a lot of good hockey here. And so we want to keep the best players in the state. We want to keep them here. If there are better players elsewhere, it is our job and our task to go out and get those players as well. I think of Nora Ratu, Mira Yeloshua, Amanda Kessel, these types of players that made a huge difference in our success as well. So I've always taken the approach since I've been involved with the program that we're going to try and get the best players and people here, regardless of where they're from. But we will always be probably pretty heavy, I would say half Minnesota kids, sometimes more, sometimes less. But our job is to recruit really, really good people first and foremost that happen to be good hockey players, regardless of where they're from. But if there's elite talent in Minnesota, we want to keep that here.
Perfect. And I noticed that there's going to be quite a bit of turnover for your roster next season. I believe nine new players are coming in, roughly speaking, 9 leaving for a variety of different reasons.
Yep.
Look like you had an unofficial trade with Jim Plumer with
It
Vermont
does look like that.
for a D. And I believe next year is going to be this coming season. It's going to be the first time you have a Canadian player, especially with Chloe Primerano
Yep.
reclassifying as a 2024 in almost 3 seasons. So
Mhm.
maybe just talk about your incoming class. All of your incoming class that are going to be freshmen are played at least at the under 18 camps for their respective countries. So are you only recruiting from under 18 camps? Is that, or is that, you're just looking for the best players and they just happen to be all from an under 18 camp?
Yeah,
Or
I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is again, we go back to the baseline and what we need from a talent perspective here at the University of Minnesota. And the majority of those kids are going to have played on their in a U18 camp, their U18 team, whatnot. And so yeah, 7 players coming in, 4 from Minnesota, Kate Kosabud, Carly Humphrey at D from Minnesota. Ayla Puppy and Kendra Distad at the forward up front, and then goaltender Hannah Clark, who was on the Canadian under 18 team, Gracie Graham, who was on that 18 team for a couple years, and then
who's
Chloe
Canadian?
Primerano, who, yep, those 3 are Canadian. Yeah, Hannah, Chloe, and Gracie. Chloe, obviously, in the hockey world, is kind of the big name that many people have heard of here over the last couple years, and so we're super excited to have her in here next year. As you mentioned, she's accelerating, reclassifying. Could be a senior in high school next year, but is choosing to come to the University of Minnesota. And I think she, from a talent and a physical standpoint, she's ready to go and ready to play in the WCHA. So we're excited for all 7 of those, plus a couple transfers, as you mentioned, Krista Parkinen from Vermont and Nat Blankova from Vermont as well. So again, we want to be in the national picture, and to do that, you have to have great players.
Perfect. All right, we're gonna get more into the recruiting thing, but maybe this is related. I noticed in the preseason last year, you played Durham West from the Ontario under 22s. I'm curious, what was that about? And maybe not only is it probably good from a recruiting perspective, because some of the top players play for Durham West, but also
Yeah.
maybe it was for your incoming freshmen, giving them a chance to play and to show them against more competition that's more at what they're comfortable with.
For sure. So there's a couple rules in Division I women's hockey. We're allowed 34 games prior to playoffs. We are allowed 1 exhibition game against another Division I team. And then we're also allowed an exhibition game against an international team. And so Dave Gwynn from Durham West is a good friend and a great coach. And so we actually had his team come in 4 or 5 years ago as well. They wanted to do that again, so they were able to come play us, play St. Thomas, and play St. Cloud, I believe, or Mankato. I can't remember which, but anytime we can, before we drop the puck for real, play somebody else so our freshmen can get acclimated to the different things. That's always super beneficial. But also from a recruiting standpoint, obviously having one of the top Canadian teams and some of the top Canadian players in our rink playing against us, seeing the game day environment is really, really important. And so we currently don't have an exhibition game against a Canadian team this year, but we'll continue to try and put those on the books. It's less about, whether we win or how much we win by or anything like that. It's more about, let's get some lines together. Let's get some D pairs together. Let's get our freshmen acclimated so that as we go into real games here the following week, we're ready to go.
And get a little Big Ten Network revenue from it, because I know I was able to watch the games on Big Ten Network. So
there you go.
Hey, I'm just curious, because you're a Big Ten team, and now that name, image, likeness compensation is getting more prevalent, at least in hockey, especially on the men's side, but I'm assuming also as well on the women's side. How much of a role does that play in any of your recruiting, and how much do your players get to take advantage of that?
Yeah, so name, image, and likeness is something that, I think was allowed by the NCAA to say, okay, the football player who's playing in front of 50 to 100,000 people, and there's 500 people with his jersey and name on the back, wearing those, shouldn't that player be able to get a cut of some of those jerseys, right? And what it turned into really, really quickly is pay for play, or play for pay, or however you want to say it. But all of a sudden, to get a good quarterback, it costs over $1 million, you know? So it got haywire really, really quickly, and it's impossible to put the genie back in the bottle. Our players, some of them, the great thing about name, image, and likeness, at least how it has been, is that us as coaches, we don't really do a whole lot with it. So if a player wants to promote a restaurant on campus, or they want to promote a car dealership, or they want to promote something, they can do that, and they can receive the benefits for that. And it's not coming from our budget. Abby Murphy is probably our highest NIL earner, as she's signed with some different companies. She's also one of the best players in the world. She's one of the best players, if not the best player in college hockey. Everybody knows her, and everybody wants her to promote their products and services. So it is in the women's game, the revenue sharing type thing that's coming into play in a couple of years, part of this $2.7 billion lawsuit for back pay for NIL opportunities missed, and then the revenue sharing moving forward. There are still a lot of question marks about that, but I can tell you, in the Big Ten, in the SEC, our administration, our athletic department, is going to have to come up with $21.5 million each year, and that will go up by 4 or 5% each year to distribute to the student athletes at the University of Minnesota. So where will that money go? A lot of it will go to football. A lot of it will go to men's and women's basketball. You know, both hockey teams are pretty big here at Minnesota, and so we will obviously receive some benefits from that as well.
Perfect. All right, we can spend another hour just talking about all that stuff, but we're not going to. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the transfer portal. Some of your coaching tree colleagues have grabbed some of your top players, especially for their graduate year. Maybe what's your perspective on the pros and cons of the transfer portal?
Well, I certainly think the pros are, if you are not playing as much as you want to be playing, if the academics are not as good, or are not what you want out of your education, if I don't think there's a lot of bad things that are going on at universities, but it's not the right fit, you then have the opportunity to try it over again, and do another place to see if that's the place for you. I think the hard part with the transfer portal is it's an easy out for kids sometimes, to be quite frank with you. It's I'm not playing here and I want to play somewhere else, so I'm just going to go, instead of maybe digging in a little more and saying, no, I don't have an option. I need to stick this out and I need to get better. Oftentimes it's an opportunity to go play somewhere else, which again is positive and a negative. But it's here to stay. Obviously it may change a little bit in regards to the fact that there's no more fifth year transfers starting next year or after next year. So will it slow down? Will kids just maybe after freshman year or sophomore year decide to transfer instead of waiting until their fifth year? There's still a lot of unknowns with that. But we've certainly taken advantage of it with 2 or 3 transfers every year. Other coaches, as you mentioned, decided to go all in on the transfer portal, and it worked, as you talk about Coach Muzz. And again, wasn't doing anything illegal. She was playing within the lines, playing within the rules, but that was the route that they wanted to go. And from a on ice competitive standpoint and national championship standpoint, it worked for them. And so, for us, we've had several or a handful of players go into the transfer portal this year, really for the first time. And again, it was about wanting to play. And we completely understand that as a staff. Like, if you're not playing at Minnesota, and we know that you could play more somewhere else, man, we're signing off on that. Go have a great experience and be a leader and a great player on another team. And so for us this year, Nat Blinkova, Krista Parkinen are the two transfers that we have coming in. A top 4D and a top 6 forward, and they're going to help us quite a bit here as we go into the season.
Perfect. All right. So just the last few questions on the recruiting related stuff. Parents really want to know, especially the class of 2026, the incoming class of 2026, where are you at in the recruiting cycle? We just passed January 15th. Obviously, you made a bunch of phone calls last weekend. Where are you at for those players? Did you make any offers in the last 5 days? And then obviously what happens now between now and August with those players that you're talking to?
Yeah, so much of it right now. So June 15th is the big day. That's when finally, kids can start receiving phone calls, text messages, offers, things like that. As coaches, we can start doing the same thing. It's kind of crazy, right? It goes from no contact to boom, like all of a sudden, kids' phones are ringing all day and buzzing all day with text messages and whatnot. And now we're into it. And so it's an evaluation period for us. We love to use the summer to evaluate kids. There's a lot of great events here in Minnesota. There's also plenty of events nationally with the U.S. national camps, the Canadian provincial camps, and then of course the U18 series with Canada is always really, really important. And so, for us as a staff, we're making the contact with the players that we feel could potentially be at the University of Minnesota. That maybe how we contact players is different than maybe how other teams contact them in regards to the frequency and things like that. But we're really trying to get to know these players as people. First of all, you have to identify and evaluate them as hockey players. But then it's a matter of identifying and getting to know them and their families, right? And so we always tell them we want, whatever you choose, make sure it's the right fit. Well, we need to make sure that each player that we bring onto our team and into our program is the right fit as well. And so, again, as I've mentioned before, we want to recruit really, really good people from good families that happen to be really good hockey players. And from a parental standpoint, don't do anything that is going to affect your kid's ability to be recruited by certain schools. So how you are acting in the stands, the things you're saying behind the scenes, and then of course, as we look at players, body language is a big thing for us, making sure that they're doing the right things, they're being a great teammate, along with, of course, being a really good hockey player.
Are you saying there's some parents who impede their kids' possibility of getting recruited by
Yes.
being a little bit crazy?
Yes, yes, I am.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot, and then you can choose to answer it or not. But have you made any offers yet for 2026?
I am not going to mention that. I think I will say that we have had discussions.
Okay. All right. I understand what that means, and we'll leave it at that. Now, you are in the middle of having camps at your school for high school players, elite players, whoever wants to sign up. Anybody can sign up.
Yep.
I'm just curious what your perspective is on your being interested in players from a recruiting process, or any players who kind of eventually come out of this and because they came to your camp or end up being someone that you end up making offers to.
Yeah, definitely. We've I look at several of our players that we have on our current team who have come to our camp, whether it was from when they were 10, 11, 12 years old or in the high school camp. And so, yes, many of our players, current players, have come through our camps. It's a great opportunity for us to get to know these players, see how they take to coaching, see if they would be a good fit for us. For them to have the opportunity to see campus, see Ritter Arena, get to know us as coaches, and see if it would be a good fit that way. So absolutely, there are many players that have come to camp that have ended up at the University of Minnesota, but multiple schools down the line here as well.
Perfect. All right. Last two kind of combined questions. What advice do you have for parents who are still a year away, or players who are still a year away from being contacted? And what advice do you have for players who maybe didn't get the contact that they were hoping to get in the last week?
Sure. The second question there, I think, is it's such a difficult one because in the days of social media and everybody, telling who they're getting offers from and who's calling them and things like that, if you're not one that has gotten a call from a school that you wanted to, or an offer or whatever, sometimes you feel like, well, geez, do they really want me? Am I not good enough? What is it? Right. And as I tell players at our camp, if you want to play college hockey, there's a place for you, whether that's Division I, Division III, or club hockey. The other thing I would say is patience. We've received some commitments recently from kids who were a year into their recruiting process and we hadn't contacted them within a year, or we didn't contact them on June 15th, but they were still out there talking to other schools, but really didn't feel like those were the great fits. But they were patient. They didn't panic. They didn't say, "Oh, I'm going to commit to this school so I can put it on Instagram," or "I need to commit because my friends are committing." They were patient. They trusted the process. It's going to be okay. If you're not getting contacted right now, it doesn't mean you're not going to get contacted later. Everybody's process is different and goes at a different speed. That's the other thing as well. So there may be some commitments from kids that are on the top of people's boards. Again, that's okay. That doesn't mean you need to commit. It just means you need to continue to go through the process to find the right fit. I think for parents who are still a year out, again, it's just, there's opportunities out there. Coaches are always watching. So make sure from a parental standpoint, you're doing what you're supposed to do. Don't prevent a team from contacting you because of your behavior, but also communicate with your kids that, hey, this is coming. Let's put you in this camp, that camp. Let's also go on vacation. Let's be kids. Let's be a family, right? Some people get so involved in the process and on all these different teams and whatnot that they forget to be kids. And by the time they get to university, they're like, geez, high school went by and we didn't even go on a family vacation. So it will come. June 15th will roll around. It will be what it's going to be. But just because you get a call or no call on June 15th doesn't mean that that's the way it's going to be. As you go through the process, continue to work hard, have fun, get better. And as I told my kids, I just want you to enjoy what you're doing. I want you to have a great attitude. I want you to give great effort. And if you do those things, let's go get some ice cream.
Perfect. Brad, thank you so much for doing this. It was great hearing about, your growing up playing multiple sports and obviously making your way back to Minnesota. Obviously hearing all about your coaching experience and your coaching tree. And then this is some phenomenal advice that you gave us about what parents, especially parents and players should be thinking about when they're going through the recruiting process. So thank you so much for doing this.
Very much appreciate it. Thank you.
I really want to thank Brad for coming on the podcast. I loved hearing about his coaching journey and his principles that lead to team success. It was also good to hear his thoughts on the summer recruiting process and what to expect. You can connect with Brad on the team website or via his Champs app profile. Links to both are in the show notes. Introducing the Champs app messaging tool. Champs app messaging is the fastest, easy way to send error-free messages to coaches. The Champs app messaging tool ensures the coach's name, email, and school are correct without the need to look online and find each coach's contact information. With the Champs app messaging tool, you can choose from a variety of email templates to send. For example, one template informs coaches about upcoming events or tournaments, and another lets a coach know about new videos added to your Champs app profile. Each template automatically populates the message with the coach's name and school and inserts personal information from your Champs app profile. This way, you can be sure the emails do not have errors. Personalize each message further to make it uniquely yours. Experience the convenience of the Champs app messaging tool yourself by logging into your Champs app account For a limited time, we are offering the Champs app messaging tool at a low introductory price for an annual subscription. As we add more amazing features to the messaging tool over the coming weeks and months, these new features will be included in your annual subscription. So get started today by logging into your Champs app account to try out the new Champs app messaging tool and easily send error-free emails to coaches. Subscribe today before the price goes up.